Our symposium. It's been an amazing time, guys. And yeah, the time has run so fast. Like, you can imagine, like 60 days ago, we are also standing here and Neil had this opening ceremony, and how fast this time run by. And but I think it's a really good sign. Like, it's like one snip, and like I heard so much voices who said like, "Oh no, just now I'm like also comfortable and like really like arrived in Germany and the congress is over." But yeah, it's also just been an amazing time, and I'm really happy that you're all here and we have today our last panel discussion. And yeah, in our symposium, we tackled the question about the transforming forestry and how we're getting ahead of current and future challenges. And yeah, we had a very good and interesting introduction from our lovely Professor Mr. Spartel, who introduced us in the German forestry and the property rights of German and the forestry practices, which were the basis for our further workshops, excursions, and lectures. And yeah, after we were here in eberswalde, we went to Taran and see the oldest botanical garden. And had the live lecture there, and it was like really cute. And yeah, we had so much. Like afterwards, we've been to Erfurt and faced like climate justice, and I think this amazing workshop like really showed us like different perspective and like yeah, all these different perspectives we have here within our like symposium like make this workshop really valuable. And afterwards, we head to Bavaria, where we faced nature conservation and the future challenges in how we face the integrated and segregated nature conservation. And had this amazing hike on the Lusen Mountain and the panel discussion where we had amazing speakers. Jörg Müller was there, and also the Bavarian State Forest and the private forest owners. And yeah, we learned like how we can implement like nature into our forestry practices. And yeah, afterwards we had to Weissenholm, Freiburg, and there we saw like mixed species forestry and alternative species in the forest landscape, which were really special. Like I had so many voices, like I don't know, like so many species in like this forest. Like before we just saw like planted forest, and then we had like a really nice example. Everybody got their maple in the cab. And we saw like really how diverse also German forest could be, like after seeing all these fire plantations. And yeah, we had also like the panel discussion about the transformative silviculture, and with our Professor Bauhus and Professor Speaker, who are like the leading professors in this field, which were like super interesting. And yeah, thanks also Alina for moderating this. It was really valuable. And we had like a poster sessions where like it was so interesting, like seeing all your works from you and your guests, and it was a good ground like to present our work, what we are doing, and sharing and get to know each other better, like on a scientific basis. And yeah, afterwards, then we had to Bonn, and we went to this fancy hotel, and like there were these amazing speakers, where we had the World Coffee, and we had like the guests from EFI, Forest Europe, AW, SDW, and GLF and FSC, and we had the opportunity to work in small groups to face like solutions, how we can introduce the voice of the youth in forest policy, and everybody get dressed and network a bit, and yeah, get to in this networking game and maybe search for some further challenges. And I think everybody was a bit excited, and yeah, those were cute. And yes, afterwards we had the gutting, and then we had this industry perspective on forest, and and there we had an introduction and like saw the perspective like what are the current challenges? Like we come from pine needles to broadleaf trees. What is the demand? What is the need? And how can the industry like influence this? And like what do the industry need? For example, like policies to change this. And yeah, I think it was really interesting also the perspective of the Egger group who like are coming directly from this field. And yeah, last but not least, we went to the Harz Mountain, and finally we could speak a bit more about bark beetles. No, I think it was really interesting, like seeing like how important this topic is for our forest, because you see like the wild landscape of like dead forest and how it influences our forestry, and that it worked with that we talked so much before. And yeah, now we have a panel discussion about the necessities we need for our future forest management. And yeah, but and all I just said is just the frameworks and the topics and the themes, but what this event makes it most special is just sitting in front of me. It's like you, like this. It's a family. Oh my God, I used to. It's so exciting. Yeah. Yeah, like you as members, as IPSA, as participants, as members of IPSA and as friends are making really this event so unique and special. And we have like 37 nations here, like sitting in front with like different cultural backgrounds and perspective, and every topic we're facing, we have such a bright perspective we can face, and it's so unique and special. And like I know, like when you come to Germany and being in like a group of 100 people can be like really overwhelming. Like you're going to lunch and then you need to sit somewhere and look around and where should I go? You go to the bus and like who's next to you, and but even next to this social pressure you're facing, I hope that we create like a safe space for all of you. Like it's like we have a space you can like a breathing where like fruitful collaboration can grow out like in the further careers of all of you, because you're like in the studies, you're starting your career, you're starting to get a vision of what you want to do in life, and now you have the possibility to connect to the whole world. Like we have all the continents and we have so many different countries, like as I say, like 37 countries. And like also from one country, for example, the Nigerians, they told me like it's so special. There's also like the different tribes of the country are like merged together in one event, like which is like also rarely. And we have all like it's really special, and I'm really happy that you're all here and take your time to contribute to this beautiful event. And yeah, and now it's. No, and in the end, it's just to say I can express my deepest gratitude to each of you, and thank you for your contributions and for your dedication and your unwavering commitment to the cause of sustainable forestry. And in the end, I'm sure that this symposium contributed to a world that appreciates forests. Thank you so much. And yeah, now we have like, I will lead over to Michael, who is like moderating this discussion. And I'm really happy about this, because I was also so overwhelmed. Like we planned to make it together, and like at one point I was like really stressed out, and this boy like said like, no, don't worry, like I can do this, I do it on my own, like don't worry. And they saw me when I was really like running out and getting, I was like, I can't do this. So it's just you, it's also the OC and me, and yeah, I'm very happy that Michael now takes over, and course. Thank you.
I think we have a good distribution of tasks. Like Ole now did the recap and also will moderate the questions. So yeah, I think also like we're gonna have also later some thank you and goodbye speeches. So I think all OC members work really hard on that. But maybe we can give now a huge applause to. Maybe we can give now a huge applause to all OC members for their work, and then I ask Nele on stage.
Thank you, Nele.
I just want to say something small because Professor Dr. Tobias Kremer has now arrived here. And before we start the panel discussion, I just want to say, without him, our LC in eberswalde would have not been what it is today. We received a lot of support in the last 3 years, also Corona times, in financial, but also in supporting issues. We would not have kept our LC like this if we wouldn't have had him. And it's a great contribution of our Dean of the Faculty made IPSA possible, but also our organization of the ISSS, to have all the people here in the LC, the support to go to conferences, the support to connect with all of you would not have been possible without Tobias. And this event, especially your support for the buses, for the organization, all the small questions, you were always open, never annoyed, and we were super thankful.
Yeah, but before we all start to cry, I first want to, or like we want to have like a short, like now also a bit of practical input or discussion, panel discussion. So yeah, we want to start with that now. As Ole mentioned, we try to give an insight on all the different perspectives which influence forest management and its challenges. Yeah, as Ole said, we had already a lot of perspective, like nature conservation, but also the industry perspective, the silviculture method perspective, the policy perspective on it. And for this panel discussion, we also try to gain as much as possible perspective on forest management again, and we will try to get some outcomes, some principles, because there's no solution that fits everything, but yeah, we try to combine the different aspects of forest management. Yeah, therefore we have the broad mixture of speakers. We have also got two participants with us, and therefore I want to invite Bashir Isai on board on stage. He would like to come. He studies. Give him a huge applause, please. He studies forestry and wildlife in the university. In the University of Maiduguri, correctly pronounced, Nigeria. I also want to invite Christmas Ongong. He's the new elected board member of IPSA as executive secretary. Please, huge applause to him. He also studies forestry in Uganda at the Makerere University. Yeah, I'm also really happy to have Katrin Hanna-Rees on stage. She's the deputy head of the unit IT governance, IT strategy, and IT demand of the Federal Office for Agriculture and Food. So I think she's going to have also some interesting perspectives there. Yeah. Torfalle and have long-time experience in nature conservation. Thank you, Mr. Fahle, for coming. And last but not least, Professor Peter Schwartel. You already know him from the first day. He's the professor for silviculture at the University of Sustainable Development in eberswalde. And we're happy to have you again here on board for your insights in silviculture. Yeah, as we have now huge perspectives here at the panel discussion, we will try to dive into the different topics. First of all, I want to go into to policy. We had 2 days ago, we had a work coffee in Bonn with German policymakers. Bashir, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you perceive the influence of climate change in forest policy development here in Germany, or in general, but also in Nigeria? No, Bashir.
Thank you very much. As you rightly introduced, my name is Bashir Ahmad. I'm a 500 level student from the University of Maiduguri. You rightly pronounced this also. I'm the president of my local chapter, University of Maiduguri Forestry and Wildlife Student Association. My university comprises of forestry and also wildlife, so we have to specialize on the two. I'm specializing on forest economy and policy, and in my final year. Thank you for the opportunity. The last days of IFSS were very emotional. Like throughout yesterday, I was thinking that we are living, so we are really living. Like, it is really interesting. Thank you for the opportunity, and I will miss everyone. The impacts of climate change in Nigeria is so devastating, especially on the issue of implementation of forest policy. One of those impacts, like I would like to start by highlighting that our people back in Nigeria, it's so sad to say, like we don't have much information on climate change and its negative impact. A greater percentage of Nigerian population are people living below poverty average. So that is also, the literacy is also very low. And all over the world, I believe the issue of climate change is new to many, except for those that have been studying it for a very long period of time. So in Nigeria, the case is not different. So we don't have much information on climate change. So also implementation of climate change policies is very hard, especially when the effect has heated very well. The silvicultural characteristics of Nigerian forests is very complicated. Like, firstly, our forest regeneration is mostly artificial regeneration. So for the governments and climate change related agencies to implement climate policies, it is very hard because we used to have like a kind of change in precipitation and humidity. So almost all the like tree species we are having in Nigeria are resistant to like drought. They can stay for a very long period of time without water. So they are very resistant to drought. So to implement climate change policy, you have to like start first on thinking of the disturbance. And that disturbance is lack of the effects of climate change mostly comes with like reducing rainfall and humidity. And also it brings about shifts in the ideas and policies, because firstly, if you want to implement a policy, you have to know what is the effect. So the effort, firstly, I will write it down. The distribution of abundance, 3 species we have in Nigeria, unlike in Germany. Like there is not much that much tree species. In Nigeria, we have more than 500 active tree species. So climate change implementing policies in Nigeria has become so hard due to the effect. The distribution of tree species need to be first considered. There are different regions in Nigeria, unlike in Germany, like I have seen. Like you go to the northern part, the southern part, the tree species you will find are almost the same. So in Nigeria, the tree species you will find in northern Nigeria are different from the ones you find in southern Nigeria. Some trees that will thrive well in northern Nigeria, they will never in southern Nigeria. Because in northern Nigeria, we have species like Kayaks, Negalithics, Melina, Arborea, Vitillaria paradoxa, baobab tree. But in southern Nigeria, we have a lot of trees that need water. They stay a long time. They consume a lot of water more than the trees in southern Nigeria. So to implement climate policies that will help mitigate climate change, you need to consider the distribution of the species. You need to consider the relative precipitation and humidity. You also need to consider the emissions. Though Nigeria and almost all the African countries don't have much carbon emission, so that also needs to be put into consideration, despite it is not that much. We are not emitting much, and also one thing that makes implementing climate change policy in Nigeria to be unique is that you still need to consider the perspective and beliefs of the people. Because in totality, our people depend much on farmlands and trees for wood consumption. So before you implement a policy, the policies are very good, though they are not being implemented much. But before you implement a policy on forests and trees, like and on mitigation of climate change, you need to also consider the livelihood of the people. We consume a lot of trees for firewood, like I said. If I can remember, from 2020 to 2023, report shows that Nigeria loses 13% of its total trees. This is a very sad development. Like out of 100%, we lose 13% of the trees, and this is because our people consume trees as their source of firewood, and that is a very sad development. So to implement policies and to know the role of those policies, you have to also consider, apart from the tree species distribution, apart from relative humidity and precipitation, you also need to consider the people. So when you are considering the people, what is the supplements you are bringing to them that will stay in place of their consumption of food? So this one also needs to be considered. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you a lot for the assessment or for the insights of Nigerian policy and what's up in the complexity of the problems of forest management. Maybe we can use or take your point with the tree species and the adaptation of tree species. We had this also in Freiburg. Maybe to Professor Spartev, how do you see the needs for exotic tree species in Germany, also within climate change?
Yes, thank you. Hello?
Or maybe the other one?
1, 2, 3. Yes. Okay. So thank you for this question. So it's a central question, of course, in the adaptation discussion. And I want to start maybe with the statement that first, of course, we should use and take advantage of our native species. Yeah? And we should focus on mixing forests. So to establish a wide species richness in our forests. But in my opinion, apart from nature conservation areas, I would also advocate for careful use or participation of exotic tree species. Maybe 10% per stand or something like that, to incorporate potential adaptive traits these species could have. Because what we want to have in our forest is forest resilience in our forests of the future, and to have many potential traits in these stands that could be important for adaptation, for enhancing the potential or the capacity of these species to compensate disturbances. So I think, in my opinion, exotic tree species can play a role, but they are not essential, of course. And we should not plant them on large areas, of course, again, as pure stands, but to incorporate them in a mixture. And some of them work quite well. Pseudotsuga, for example, or other conifers from North America, they could be easily integrated in continuous cover forest systems because they are quite shade tolerant, or a little bit shade tolerant. So we can establish vertically structured stands and mixed stands with these species. But the focus should be on the native species.
To Mr. Flade, what is your perspective on the statement of Mr. Spate?
I could make it easy and say, after our regulation of the forest reserve, the planting growing of non-native species is not allowed, so it's very easy. But I think, independent from the biosphere reserve, if we use exotic species in our forests, we need a proper risk assessment, because we had some very negative experiences with some species. We cannot rid of them anymore, like Rhodus erotica, for instance, in the pine forests, or Rubinga pseudoacacia, which is a huge problem for our steppe grasslands, for instance. So we might have a lot of conservation problems with exotic tree species, which we don't know previous to the experiment. And another problem is that such species are not integrated in our biosynosis of our landscape. So that means phytophagous insects or birds or so. So we will mostly have lower species diversity of invertebrates, and also lower diversity of vertebrates, of birds, and so on in such things. So it's of course it's a trade-off at the end, but I think we have to be very careful, and we should use exotic species only if we come to the conclusion that the native species cannot cope with the conditions anymore. But we are not at that point yet.
And thank you for your insights. We have talked a lot about also close to nature forestry in Germany, and I would like to talk with you about the adaptability about close to nature forestry also in the tropics. We have heard different perspectives already on that. For example, Mr. Müller was in favor for also intent, or he wasn't 100% in favor for intensive plantation, but he saw the advantages also of that it gives that it fulfills the use the demands of resources, maybe Christmas, you could elaborate how you see the perspectives on continuous cover forestry versus plantation forestry in Uganda, in your your home country?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Chris Masongo from Uganda, and I've been doing Bachelor of Science in Forestry in research, and I focus more in that aspect of conservation forestry rather than plantation. So in case I'm giving biased, I know response because of plantation and conservation. I'm sorry about that, but all right. So in Uganda, I can say that we don't have much of the CCF, much as it's something which is trying to be adopted. Because the forests are not as well as yet managed as it's in Germany here, because forest management is not something easy and needs a lot of money and funding. So I would say that if Uganda doesn't really, if Uganda doesn't adopt the CCF forest management, then our forests are at risk. Because I speak right now, the forests are being used in a way that is not sustainable. Where people are doing clear cuts, and this is causing devastating impacts on the soil. So then even to make it more unique, like we are taught all other aspects of forest management, but it was my first time to hear about CCF here in Germany. So meaning if I go back, I think I'll some work to go and do back in my country. So there is an increase in the level of monoculture forest. I mean, where they just plant one stand, basically maybe eucalyptus or pine, where people are trying to actually shift from the natural forest, and they are aiming at raising these pure stands because they are fast growing and they can of course enhance benefits in a very short period of time. So I can say that in my country, it's not yet something so popular. It is something that needs to be introduced in Uganda. But otherwise, it's really a very good system, and if my country could really adopt it in case they could afford anyway, to be a very good, system for the sustainability for my forestry sector. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for your answer. Maybe to Katrin Müller-Ries, you also you're working, or you're also influenced by, or you're not a representative of the IMW, but you're also a supporter of close nature forestry. Could you maybe could you elaborate on where you see the difficulties in, or the problematics in the problematics or problems and challenges, but also the possibilities of implementing them both here in Germany, but also like in tropical forest?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me first talk how I got physically here as a former ISA student here at eberswalde University. So nice to see you here. I just came from my holiday from Rügen, so it's up in the north of Germany, to Eberswalde. And when I entered the city or around the Brandenburg area, I saw lots of pine species here, all in the same age and all in the same species around. I don't know if you've seen it here too. Also through Germany, you've seen a lot of broadleaf forests. So the main focus is really that we have healthy forests, and healthy forests means, as Peter has already said, mixed forest. So that's one of the top that we have to have our climate change adopted forests. And also what I got there was, I spoke in Rügen, I spoke with a RMB colleague, who's also a friend of me. He's forester, he's our age, and he's really into a forest manager. So he also told me that we really have to think globally. It's not only the forestry here in Germany. If we make forestry, it's nice to be here, but if the politics says we have to have our wood, and we need to somehow live with wood, then we cannot fulfill all the demand what the German need on wood. So it's a global perspective that we have to be into. And we really have to use the wood sustainable. So forests are good for productive wood, but also have high energy on the biodiversity. So our forests, they're nice when you go into it. Also the pine forests are nice when you go into it. But all the species, all the diverse livings there, they should be somehow protected and also enlarged. So it's a mixture of economical and ecological point of view. And also what I really have to say, when you think about using the wood, it should be sustainable, so it should be long-term sustainable, not only for one nice building and then it's staying there 10 years and then it will be another building, but there should be a huge variety of using the wood, also for our children, grandchildren, and so on.
Thank you. Yeah, you open up like several points. I want to still focus a bit on the continuous cover forestry or close to nature forestry, also in the tropics, and want to ask Mr. Stratet about your experience. You've been in Brazil.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you like how you see the possibilities of implementing more close to nature forestry in Brazil, but also like what are the pros for holding the plantation forestry and so not just talk about the advantages because we heard that a lot, but maybe also what are the cons of that.
Okay, so very complex question. Thank you. I think the potential for continuous cover forestry in natural or native tropical forests is quite huge or is there. Because if you look into the silvicultural literature, there's a lot of silvicultural systems already established for native tropical forests, so not for plantations with exotics. So there is, for example, the tropical shelterwood, which was practiced in Nigeria or in Western Africa in the 1950s, 60s. And there are, that is more important, selective systems for tropical forests. Selective systems means systems similar to the plantar forest or to the truly continuous cover forest, or this archetype of continuous cover forest I introduced in my lecture 2 weeks ago. So I think these silvicultural prescriptions, like the selective system in Brazil or the Indonesian or Malaysian selective system, they have a value and they can be implemented. But I think the problem is larger because we have this problem of conservation of tropical forests. So I think we should first lay an emphasis on the protection of many of these native tropical forests. And the management is complicated. So even the sustainable and the continuous cover management of these forests is complicated. You have a lot of species. You have to protect the soil and the remaining stand, so you have to care for reduced impact logging. I think it's much more complicated, significantly more complicated than management here in Germany. So I think there's a huge challenge to do this, but the focus in the tropics should be on conservation first, as Lula in Brazil tried now with the neighboring countries in a conference 4 weeks ago. Maybe we should look at the success. So that is the focus, the first focus. And then I want to make a comment on the plantation forests. I think these plantation forests, if you look at the distribution and the share of plantation forests in these countries, in Brazil, they occupy 7% of the forest land. And 93% of the forest is native or degraded forest, of course. But on these 7% in Brazil, 60–70% of the timber production is realized in this country. So I think they are indispensable for timber production for growing economies, such as Brazil is. When I went to Brazil in 1998, Brazil had 140 million inhabitants. Today, Brazil has 220 million inhabitants. So I think these countries, these economies, they need timber, they need wooden products, and the wood or the timber must be produced somewhere, and the plantations can help to produce this timber. But it's a completely different sector of forestry. It's not integrated, it's segregated. You have intensive plantations on the one hand with all the negative sides, pesticide application, water problem, etc., fertilization. And you have, on the other hand, the native forest, which is on a larger scale degraded. And here another topic is upcoming, and that's the topic you all know, it's forest restoration. I think you have talked about that, maybe with EFI or with the other institution. All these degraded areas, free from forest or with forests with a lower quality, we should lay emphasis and focus on the continuous restoration of these areas, which is very important. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. To the topic of integrated versus segregated nature conservation, we had already a huge discussion. I want to also ask Mr. Flade on that point again, because I found it really interesting. As you the head of biosphere reserves, maybe you could shortly also introduce again what means a biosphere reserves, because it stands for integrated nature conservation. So it's a bit a different approach. And then you could make a point on the statements about like this plantation forestry in the tropics, and if it's out of your perspective working, or what are the challenges there?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know, have you visited the biosphere reserve or not?
Yeah.
You have visited?
Yeah. But not we as a group, I personally have.
You have a group now.
No, we have as a group.
Okay, so I have to say something about biosphere reserves in general. So biosphere reserves are the most important tool of the Man Biosphere Program of the UNESCO. The UNESCO is the United Nations Organizations for Education, Science and Culture. So not for environment, not for nature conservation. So it deals with the relationship between man and biosphere. And the biosphere reserve should be or should develop to model regions for sustainable development. So that's the idea. So we have to balance, or we try to balance, the demands of mankind and the nature ecosystems. So the segregation approach is just the contrary approach in general. So, but in case of forestry, the term of sustainability is mostly used in a very simple way, so that it means you cannot take more wood than it is growing in the forest. But for me, sustainability is much more. So if we want to achieve sustainable use of forests, we have also to maintain the ecosystem services of the forest. It means the function the forest has for climate regulation, for water balance of the landscape, for cooling of the landscape, of course for biodiversity and so on. And I think if you would, in Germany, if you would practice a model with a few strict reserves, for instance, national parks or core zones, and on the remaining area, intensive forestry with plantations and so on, it would never work. Because plantations do not serve for many of the ecosystem functions, because they are too risky and too unstable. And especially coniferous plantations are a huge problem for the landscape water budget, because the groundwater supply is so low under the pine plantations, for instance. and they do not serve as habitat for a huge number of natural species. So we think we need the integration approach, not only for timber use, but also for nature conservation purposes, because the segregation model doesn't work. In general. But I would like to mention another thing I will talk about briefly, this discussion. The WWF has elaborated a study together with the University of Kassel. The title is Everything of Wood. And they try to estimate the demand, the global demand for timber, for every purposes, for paper, for fuel wood, for furniture, for construction, and this global supply of wood, the sustainable supply of wood. So what can we take, which amount of wood we can take from the forest without deteriorating the ecological functions. We try to calculate it. And the result is that the demand for wood use, for timber use, is still growing. And the supply the forest can deliver is declining since decades. And we have and the scissor of these two curves is going, is traveling. So we are already at the point that the demand for timber is higher than the forest of the world can deliver in a sustainable way. And that means we have to lower the demand, and especially in the rich countries like European Union or the United States, the consumption is much too high. And in other African countries, you rely on the forest, on the timber. And that's a huge problem, a global problem. And so, to come back to our biosphere reserve, we agree with the foresters in our biosphere reserve that first we have to avoid plantations, monoculture plantations. We have to transform coniferous plantation into mixed forest, maybe also with a small proportion of exotic species. That's not the general problem. And that we have to reduce the demand for timber. So we question the use of timber for as fuel wood in our environment. It may be completely different in Nigeria. We have to question the use of timber for paper, for instance, cellulose timber. We have to use more timber for house construction, but we cannot deliver all the timber which was needed if we would construct houses only of wood. Would not be enough anymore. It's too late. And we just try to balance it, and we agreed with the foresters in our vice reserve that we have to reduce the timber use, independently of strict reserve or not strict reserves. And that we have to come to permanent forestry, of course, to mix forest dominated by native species. And that we have to increase the timber storage in the forest. We have to let become forest older than they are at the moment. So we have to increase the volume. So this is the general direction we are working at the moment.
Thank you a lot for your insight. You're talking about limited resources in a really huge or populated world, and that we have to also reduce, at least in the rich countries, that we have to also reduce our demands. And as we have limited resources, there's also therefore a need of an increase of efficiency. Therefore, I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Valeries, Can digitalization help with doing so, as you working in the connecting forestry and also digitalization?
Yeah, thank you. This is now the field where I'm working. I'm not a digitalizer of forest, but more or less a digitalizer, hopefully, in the administration of Germany, but we will see. Yeah, of course, digital technologies can enhance also the need of forest. We have a big variety of possibilities to support forestry or forest management. We can, of course, analyze the growth and the vulnerabilities, insects, or so on, and the growth of forest, or the crowns and the trees with satellite images. Maybe you already use it in your country, I don't know. But there's many possibilities to use these pictures from a bird's perspective. And also we have digital tools to keep treatments, so the insights of administration easier to work with. So our foresters do not need the time on their offices; they should be outside. The time to administration of the forest should be in an app or somehow in an IT service, and in order to lower the administration of the forest. And of course, I think what's also the most important for our forests, that everyone knows that there are forests which should be protected or we should live with. So it's the social media impact, or of course the tools we were speaking, or we are speaking with normal people, that forests are in our life and should be protected or should be used.
So we wanted to change mics so that it's more comfortable for the audience to see, because this is easier. Thank you. Is it working? Thank you for your insight. If no one has a point at the moment for also digitalization of forestry, I would also ask Christos again about like how climate change is affecting the forest in your country, in Uganda, and if there's also local knowledge and practices that can contribute to global adaptation efforts. As we now discussed during the FSS all the time, like really scientific approaches, but also like to also get local knowledge can be one option of climate change adaptation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course,
I think it should work.
thank you very much. Climate change is really impacting the forest in Uganda, just like it's doing almost every country in the world. So of course, Uganda is not an exception. First and foremost, Uganda is really, it has diverse species of trees compared to Germany here, because here there are just some few species. But due to climate impact, the country has been really facing, devastating loss in the forest cover. Just to give you a few statistics, in 1990s, Uganda's forest cover was at 24%. Then in 2012, it had reduced to 9% of the forest cover. It was over like beyond half of the forest lost in 10 years. Since then, there have been massive efforts to try to bring back the forest. It's now at 11%. So, how is climate change really impacting the forest cover in Uganda? So, first and foremost, there has been a shift in the rainfall patterns, whereby it's not as normal as it used to be. Like every year, the forest management do what they call enrichment planting. So if you go and plant this in the forest, maybe like to fill up the gaps which were degraded. So most times it's hard to predict when rainfall will be there. So these forest managers go and plant these trees to fill up the gaps in the forest, but due to the pattern is not now predictable. So they go there and plant, and an abrupt drop comes, and it really affects the forest. So this is affecting forest regeneration by the forest workers. Then still, there has also been increased cases of abrupt weather events, extreme weather events like drought, which also affects the forest generation. Then also among the most severe one I can talk about is the forest fires. This is mainly happening in the northeastern part of Uganda, whereby when the droughts become extreme, and I know people there do a lot of hunting, and of course hunting in my country involves fire. I don't know here how it is, but people tend to go and set fire to scare away the. So by so doing, like the fires become so intense, and these fires, of course, like the dryness has been increased due to the climate change. And this is really affecting the regeneration of the saplings which are in the forest. So all these ones here are really affecting the forest sector in Uganda. There is a lot of problems. Then also the same issue is happening in that due to climate change, there are upcoming invasive species which are trying to overtake the indigenous species. We have one forest in Uganda, maybe some of you may have read about it. It's called Mavira Forest. Mavira Forest. It was one of the most diverse forests, but as I speak right now, there is an invasive tree. It's called Eberswalde. Bosnia Mavira. It's almost taken over the entire forest. That wasn't there before. Then still, the changes in the conditions are becoming favorable for emergence of new pests. In 2019, when 2019 to 2020, when there was that extreme COVID situation, Uganda was battling two things: the COVID pandemic and also the locusts. Locusts were actually something which were very rare in my country, but due to the climate change, the conditions are now becoming gradually favorable. So there was an invasion in my country. So the country was battling two things: people were dying and also trees were dying. So it was really a very effective condition in my country. So like the locusts came in, they were depolating every green thing that would come around, not just forests, but forests, crops and everything, and it was really devastating. So locusts, desert locusts. The scientific name I really can't say it right now. Yeah, but it can really defoliate the forest. For them, once they go to a green place, they live there when there's nothing green remaining. Like they remove everything. Yes, focus. So a lot of things really interconnection to affect the forest sector due to, of course, climate change. Then to go on your point of what local knowledge can be used at a global scale to address the climate issue. To protect the forest. So, of course, there have been several local practices and knowledge that have been practiced over time to conserve the forest in Uganda. But recently, due to the form of education, globalization, and a mix of culture, most of those traditional habits are really getting lost, and people are adopting the modern way of doing things. But not just some few practices still do exist. Yes, but very few of them really are available. So basically, people in my community have been using what they call, taboos. I don't know what you mean by taboo. Do you know taboos? Yeah. So fine, maybe like they just basically other things like they could say maybe just to make the hunters not to go and put fire in the forest, like they could prohibit using fire in the forest and all that. Then of course I don't think that can be used at a global scale. Then another thing is they're trying to establish what they call the mixed stance. Because when drought comes in, some species are more susceptible to drought and everything, but if they put in a mixed stance, it's trying to spread the risk. So meaning not just some may die, some may still have the opportunity to survive. So that's what they're doing. So as they go and do their planting, as they do the enrichment planting, they try to mix different species to diversify and also spread the risk. Then basically, another way of which is a bit traditional. Also, people tend to, conserve the watersheds because these watersheds are really very important if our forests are to, continue growing. So basically, there are some tree species which are prohibited and they are not planted. Much as they don't know the science behind that, but they use different sayings. For example, it's not something good for us to plant this tree called eucalyptus near our water bodies because its water demand is too much. And if you plant it, it can just convert a swampy area to like a dry place. So like in so doing, they're trying to conserve the watersheds and promote that to ensure that water is conserved. So yeah, sure. Then yes, of course there are so many, but like I say, due to the changing situations, people are now coming into that global way of doing things, so they have lost their culture. But those are a few that I can still recall, and I'm sure, of course, as time keeps on going, and people will have to have one habit. There will be no commodity. There will be no knowledge. Then, what can be done?
Yeah, maybe I want to stay a bit like with the forest fire topic because I think it's really relevant also in Europe and all around the world. So there are different measures of handling forest fire. There's, for example, also like in the US, for at least like this controlled fire system, and here in Germany, like in not boreal forest, but like in temperate forest, there's also the question of increasement of dead wood for stopping forest fires, or to have like another water source within the forest. But like now you said like your principle or one local knowledge is to prohibit fires. So maybe a question to the round, like are there principles of silviculture and with what criteria has to be taken into account when it comes to the topic of forest fires? If somebody wants to elaborate on that.
Yes, maybe. Although I'm not a fire expert. You should have asked Michael Müller from Tarant. He's a well-known fire expert. So I think what we are doing in general, when we convert pure pine stands, for example, in northeastern Germany, and when we develop mixed stands with a high proportion of broadleaf trees, and when we fragment the forest so that we have a forest landscape with high patchiness, maybe different stands, different development stages, then we are working in the direction to prevent severe fires. Maybe we cannot completely cancel the fire probability because fires are anthropogenic in Germany and they will occur, but we can prevent the probability that a ground fire or a smaller fire develops in full or in ground fire. So I think we are working in this direction, and then we have a good fire survey in Brandenburg or in the northeast. And we do measures, silviculturally spoken. We have these fire edges or these stand edges where we plant, for example, red oak, or we increase the share of broadleaf tree species. We reduce the density of the stand in order to prevent these fire ladders, or to reduce these fire ladders. So we can do something, but we cannot fully cancel this disturbance, So, and we have this ammunition problem in some areas in Germany where on former military training areas, we have the contamination with ammunition, and there the combat of fires is very difficult. So it's a complex problem, but we can do silviculturally the best by converting our forests into mixed structures.
maybe to Mr. Flade, how is it in your biosphere reserve with the forest fires, but maybe also more general than what is your perspective on more nature forest or virgin forest? How's there the forest fire risk?
Yeah, we have no bigger problems with forest fires, despite we have pine plantations in the southwestern biosphere. But most of them are in transformation. It means they have deciduous undergrowth. So we had 2 years ago, we had a forest fire for a few hectares, I suppose. But our native forest types are mainly beech forest, beech oak forest, and they don't burn. It's not possible to burn them. So I'm the wrong person to ask about fire prevention.
But this could be interesting to develop in a principle out of it, that there's some tree species which are less adaptive or which has a lower how to say vulnerability for forest fires, and others may have a higher one.
Yeah. So our deciduous trees do not really burn, different from eucalyptus, which are really dangerous, like we have seen in Spain or in the Mediterranean. So I think it's an additional argument to transform these coniferous stands as quick as possible, especially in the dry climates of northeastern Germany. So we have only between 500 and 600 millimeters of precipitation. So it's a really dry region. And if climate change goes ahead, then we will have a more negative water landscape. And so the risk of huge forest fires is highest in our region, in whole Germany. So we should be the first to transform our coniferous stands.
Thank you. How can digitalization help with preventing forest fire?
Okay, thank you. Let's say how can not only digitalization, but also the measurement, the action can prevent wildfires. I've seen a big wildfire in the chain. It's near Brandenburg, Mecklenburg, so it's somewhere in the northeast, and it's a military area, as Peter already said. And there they haven't taken measures before to prevent the area from wildfires. And then someone, cigarette or also military base equipment enlarged the fire. And afterwards, they had a big circle of a free path of sand around the area and within strikes. And I think in this year, the fire wasn't that large as the year before, but here we see that measures taken before a burning area. It's very important. And also, of course, digitalization. So have a map where the roads are, where the fire preventers can go on, or from by the air, planes came or can come to put water on the burning areas. It's very important to have it, and also maybe some satellite images or some images with a camera, which has some heating measures. Can help to have the big fire holes, which take a long time to put it down. So we've seen it in Canada, it takes a long time, and in Germany it took us, I think, 2 weeks or more that the fire were can burn out.
Thank you a lot. Before we come to also questions from the audience, I wanted to give you still the possibility of giving not a really final, but a kind of a final statement, and then also for the audience to get prepared for the question around. Somebody wants to start with the final statement, or you don't have anything to say anymore?
Thank you very much. my much concern is mostly on the implementation of forest policies. There is one popular African or let me say Nigerian saying that says, I quote, "You cannot shave my head while I'm absent." By implementing forest policies, agencies, governments concerned used to like have a mistake on implementing forest policies. The stakeholders that are really into that knows the knowledge and have the research of mitigating climate change and climate policies are not being fully involved. Like I used to really criticize conference of parties. I used to really criticize these conferences because they are not directly having impact on real thing. Like each countries are sending their delegations to Bonn and Paris conferences, climate conference of parties, but those that supposed to have the knowledge and those that have the knowledge and can contribute and bring back good tidings back to their country are not fully involved. Like back in Nigeria and almost all the 54 African countries, if they show you the presidential delegations that are attending COP conferences, it's like they are going for a political conference. It's not a climate conference. Like in Europe, they are really trying, Germany to be specific. If you remove bad Britons from German forest is the best. I think Germany and German foresters used to arm themselves and really fight bad Britons because climate conference and policies don't mostly used to involve the people with the real knowledge. That is why I said you cannot shake my head to an athlete. If you will note, the conferences need to involve people with the normal knowledge and real knowledge of how to do things. All presidential delegations from all countries will attend the conferences, budget a huge sum of money, lay a lot of frameworks, and after a week or days, they depart. Next year, another conference. But out of those frameworks that have been laid down, if you bring all the people back and ask them, have they implemented 10%, you will not see even 5%. So I think the issue is people with the real knowledge are not being involved. Major groups, student groups, researchers and scientists that are related with climate change, they are not given the opportunity to fully and actively participate in creating and implementing those particular policies. Like all of us here are foresters from 37 30 something country. Chris was had something and he said he will try and go back and engage it back with his country. And I have learned a lot of things that I think if I go back, I will implement in one or two plantations. And I know most of us here have seen one or two things that fascinates them. So this means that those with the knowledge of forestry have been involved and they have learned and they are going to like put it into practice. You cannot learn something, not to put it into practice, and you expect yourself to be a stakeholder in that particular. You are never a stakeholder, you are just a participator. You were never a stakeholder. Foresters here have learned a lot thanks to IPSA for all this, and I'm sure the knowledge they learned will be put into practice in one way or the other. This is the effect of putting those people related to the thing to participate in the thing. You cannot carry people from medical things or agricultural things, something close to forestry, and bring them to international forestry students. But you carry foresters. This means that you want them to learn and like give back this. Same scenario is happening in the government and delegations. A lot of money will be put, but the professors, the scientists, the climate change experts are not being involved. So I think if countries and those involved will adjust, like, okay, let's involve the serious ones. Let's involve those that have the knowledge so that we can really, like, I used to take the issue of climate change like laughable or even a joke because the real ball, those that know the ball are not being pushed to the first level. So countries should adjust. During the International Leaders Convention on the 12th of August, the theme was something related to climate change and green skills. So I was attending one program, one radio and television program, and I criticized hard the government on its lies handling to climate issue. I criticized hard, and after I finished that particular thing, I go out. I was also criticized because I have like indirectly touched the government about the mishandling and mismanaging of the climate funds and climate issues. But the real thing is that to me and to those people that are ready to understand the truth, I have said the truth, I have spoken about the truth. But the issue is that mostly the governments are not ready to like fully accept the fact that they are doing the wrong thing in terms of handling climate change. Almost all the head of states, like,
Maybe you can come to
okay, the head of states, like out of 100% of the head of governments, you find that less than few percent of them are climate political or something. So they don't supposed to be there. Let them send a delegation that can be useful back to their countries. So that's my perception. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe also to continue again, like you talked about like the lack of representation also in like in the ministries, but also in conference. Are there mechanisms, or can you give an insight like how that can be implemented into your ministry? The statement.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to be very careful, but I'm here as a private person. Yeah. So, of course, if you go to such conferences, you always find more political affected persons who like to speak, who like to talk, and more scientific people, they like to see and they like to find new things and not to talk somewhere and be there and fight for something maybe. And I've been to many conferences also about not forest-related topic, but other scientific-related topics. And there were some scientifics because in Germany you have different kind of ministries. I'm in not in the ministry, but the upper layer, I would say. I'm in the working layer, so it's the Federal Office of Agriculture and Food. And there's very many experts who share the knowledge and try to emphasize and try to get together to find a new solution for the next law period or next period of doing something forestry or landscape and food related. But I agree, conferences are nice to share the knowledge, are also nice to be there, nice to shake hands, as we are in a conference here. But I think every time there is one piece of knowledge you take home and you think about it, even the big politicians, and every conference will have a need to be there. And I'm living in Bonn and I'm working in Bonn, so I know all these big houses. And I think these conferences should be everywhere, not only in the big cities of conference, so that people also have to move around, see other landscape, other people, and then having there some solutions.
Thank you a lot. Maybe for the final statements, try to be in 2 minutes, that we come then also to the Q&A.
Okay, I would like to have a summarizing view on the political discussion about forests in Germany in the last 30, 40 years. The Germans love to talk about forests, the whole society, artists, residents, politicians. But the focus of the discussion about forests, the political discussion, has shifted at least 2 times in the last 30 years. 30, 40 years ago, the main discussion or the main focus was on timber use. So we want to do sustainable timber use in our forests. The discussion was how many nature conservation we can practice or first take out of use without constraining limiting timber use. What the main discussion? Not too much conservation, please. We need the timber. Then it shifted to to new targets. So set aside 2% of the forest out of use, or 5% or 10%. EU biodiversity strategy says 5% of the forest and now 10% have to be taken out of use. And remnant for ecosystem services and wildlife. And then there was a discussion how much it should be. And now it has shifted again as aftermath of the drought we had the last 4 or 5 years. So now they are discussing about the survival of forests. Not so much about timber use, not so much about biodiversity conservation, but we have to care about the survival of our forests. Because we have these dying plantations and bark beetle infestations and so on. And now the whole society is panicking. Do we lose our forests at all? And this was the development over the last 30 years. And I think it's dramatic. And it's probably completely different in Germany compared to Uganda or Nigeria. Yeah, but we have all these problems that we have to fear about the future of the forest, independent of timber use.
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe just like to speak up. It's something so good to get that knowledge, but it's something more important if you go and implement it. Because if you keep learning and you don't implement what you're learning, then it's useless knowledge. So I just request all of us who have been here to really go and implement back home what you have learned in their stay here in Germany. That would really make more sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in 2 minutes, I would, as a recommendation, I would really, from a silvicultural standpoint, I would recommend really close to nature or continuous cover forestry as a really suitable method or approach also in times of climate change. If I would take into account also the landscape perspective or approach, I would integrate protected areas in a sufficient size, so maybe 10-50%. This is due to the societal discussions. And I would strongly advocate in total for an adaptive open system. So what we must do, we must constantly learn from the outcomes of our management, and then slightly adapt if necessary. So I would recommend for you to establish systems which are open and not very narrow. So just to focus just on exotic or on native species, but to keep it open, to keep it adaptive. So that's my recommendation from the silvicultural standpoint. Thank you.
Okay, so then Ole takes over with the question from the audience.
Yes, so firstly, thank you for your contributions and also emotionally last statements. It was really interesting. Thank you so much. And now we come to the question round, and yeah, feel free. We have the Slido here, like the code, and ask like some questions you want to get answered by our like interested audience here, or the panelists here. And since we already faced like the topic of tropical forest or like monoculture forest and continuous cover forest, we have like the first questions. Because there are some countries who are dependent intensely on monocultures, and they have also simultaneously a huge potential in managing native forests. So you have like these counterparts. There's the question in like for us as young professionals, how can we and where should we as young professionals promote the diversification of the forest sector? So where can we engage to solve like this problem? I would ask this as a general question, and maybe if you have some ideas about this, you can start. So the question is about like how can we as young professionals promote the diversification of the first sector? Like where can we engage? We talked about continuous cover forest, and like for us, like from my like out of a German perspective, it's not sometimes sounds like the principle which is like necessary to combat climate change. You also mentioned the last statement, Professor Stade. You're a good representative of like continuous cover forests, and the question is now, like, is it adaptable also for tropical zones where there's also a big potential, and like the system of plantation forest works there, and there's a huge a huge potential to use these, and like, is it like, should we transform it, or maybe you got it.
Okay, I hope I understood the question. So, as I mentioned 1 hour ago, you can use these principles of continuous cover forestry in the native forest management if it is necessary in a country. So, look at Brazil with 500 million hectares of native forests. You can delimit some forests and manage them, try to manage them sustainably with selective approaches. That is one adaptation of the continuous cover forestry principle. But then you can do something different. You can also try to make plantations more natural. For example, I saw, of course, many eucalypt and pine and acacia plantations in South America, but I also saw first attempts to establish plantations first with native species, with a mixture of maybe the 5 or 6 most important native tree species of an area, but in a plantation form. Or you can even make normal pine plantations a little bit more natural. For example, what many forest owners do and are obliged to do in South America at least, they have to establish or retain corridors of natural vegetation between the plantations, maybe in a size of 40–30% of the whole property. So you have to retain, for example, riparian forests or other native corridors between your plantations, and then you have the plantations in between. So you can work a little bit in both directions to apply some principles in the native forests if you don't want to protect them completely, and to make plantations which have a percentage of sometimes 5, 6, 10% in the countries, to make them a little bit more natural. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is like the methodology of how we can implement this, and like what is the methodology? And the question was like, now as we sit here as young professionals and like as people who are like willing to have an impact on like the transformation and change. And the question was more about like, okay, when it's an example, like how we can change the system into that, if we see it as an approach. So where should we address? Like, is it the policy, or is it the education, or like where is it like where we can find a niche where we can have the biggest impact to transform it, and maybe not just like this tropical. Maybe we can formulate a principle also out of it.
Yeah, I think you already talked about it. It's about the education and knowledge in our human beings. So not everyone knows that plantation is not a good thing, and I think everyone has a smartphone here, so we all know Instagram or Snapchat and so on. And in Germany, we already have some quite good programs from the Landesforst and from Bundesforst, so the federal forest areas, and also from the University of Göttingen Forst Erklärt. These are 2 or 3 people who really talk about forest things, what is a bark beetle, what are plantage. And they talk about it, and they take an insight into the risk and the challenges of those. And this is quite good because then everyone knows, same tree species are not good at one place. We need to have different species, and so maybe the population or the human population says, okay, I don't want to buy these articles which are from plantations. I really want to buy maybe articles which have a certificate and so on. So it's, I think, more or less perspective of knowledge and education.
Okay, so knowledge and education, and we have like another question which also goes into the policy department, and which you also mentioned, and it's about like how do you think these policies are included in the agenda that the UN is promoting on the transformation of agri-food systems. So do we have already, what is the state of mind, like, do we have, like, are these policies already included, and what, yeah, maybe what can we, like, do for it, or like how can we contribute also to, like, yeah, like transformation for the UN? Maybe the bridge was a bit far. Try to. But yeah, thank you for your contribution for the question, and like maybe we can also move on to like another department. So we talk about like the demand we have in timber, like with this monoculture, the plantation forest. And there's a question from Jinju, which is asking, like, using wood as a building material will be the trend in the future. The demand will still increase. Is it mean that we must find ways to supply more wood, or do you think it's more about transforming the building industry? Maybe we can.
Mr. Flade was already talking about it. So you want to answer that? Or maybe also to the other panelists afterwards?
Yes, so we have a huge problem with building, with house construction in Germany, but also in other countries, because we use too much area. The area proportion is just covered by concrete and so on is growing, and it's too big. On the other hand, concrete production is a huge problem for climate, for greenhouse gas emissions, because it's very energy intensive. So I think we have to do both. We have to replace concrete buildings by other materials, also by wood. Wood as construction material. It's on one hand, and that's also good in respect to greenhouse gas emissions, because we replace concrete by wood, and we have a long-lasting use of the wood we take from the forest, so it's positive. On the other hand, we have not enough forests to cover the whole demand for construction. So we have also to reduce the construction activity. And this is a very hard piece of work, also in the political discussion. We have to slow down the construction of new buildings and houses. It is still going on and going on, especially in Europe. So we have to go both directions.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's always like an interplay that we have different factors, and we have to find solutions for both, like the need and the supply. Do we have more contributions to these questions also, or?
Go first.
And yeah, afterwards we can also get questions directly from the audience if you would like to speak up, like for yourself. Thank you very much.
Well, with my knowledge and perception and understanding of the use of woody houses in my country, due to the weather condition and near the temperature, we don't have back in Nigeria, we don't have much houses in wood, but we used to do like some construction works and roofing. The importance of wood and the use usually mostly comes like roofing, doing constructions. So and still the demand is very high, despite we are not using it that much. But here in Germany, I see that there are a lot of houses that uses wood like as greater percentage of the building, not concrete. Yeah, to mitigate emissions during the production of cement and other things required for concrete houses, the use of wood is good. But if we look at the perception of consumption of the wood, then there is also a problem on its side. Like the demand is very high, but the production is slow. Like it will take a short period of time to produce materials needed for concrete houses, but a very long period of time to produce a hardwood or softwood for building. So back in my country, we use trees that produce a lot of wood. As I said before, our people are not much into forests and production of wood. Those that are into so produces plantations and natural forests, they cut them down and they maintain them to get wood, but not for any other purpose. Mostly it's for commercial purpose, and the commercial purpose is timber product. So the timber product we cultivate trees like Iroko tree, I cannot remember the scientific name, Iroko tree, Iroko tree, Kaya senegalensis, and Melina, they produce a good soil, they produce a lot of wood. So that is why I think we key into producing them much. So if a country like to be using woody houses, I think they should also imbibe the idea of planting or trying to generation of more trees that produce more wood and like genetical or methods that can make the trees to grow fast and to have in abundance should be imbibed.
Yes, to add on to what you're saying, like forests do play several roles and can be economic, social, and environmental. So, constructing very nice building from timber from forests is really so good for social aspect and also the economics. But if one aspect is trying to overshadow the other aspect, so of course we can't just aim at looking at the economics and leaving around along the environmental aspects. So meaning if the demand is outstripping the supply, then of course, if possible, substitutes should be made, but these substitutes should be environmentally friendly. Then, if the worst comes to the worst, then of course they can maybe bring in machines which reduce wastage from timber and the forest, like how to convert the waste also into products to ensure maximum benefit from a log or a timber stand. Thank you.
Yeah, only to make it short, I think we need wooden building, so we also see the construction here, because other material is probably not better than using the wood, but we have to really also think about refurbish. So if there's a building which is not needed anymore, we should not put it on the waste or burn it, but we should refurbish it and use it otherwise. So it should be more in our society.
Okay. So maybe let's round it up like with a closing question from to you guys. As you know here, like, as the representative of the African country in this panel, we have a question from Yulika, which is really good, and it's it's like about what support and changes would you like to see in the international community to tackle challenges of the climate crisis in your country, on your continent, and what support and changes do you see?
Well, it's sad to say, well, my country and the rest of the 53 countries in Africa are vulnerable. Like, they are not that much civilized and economically stable like European and other big countries. though we are coming up. So changes that I would like to see in African countries and my country to be specific is funding and the policies to be implemented. Like if there is funding and then the policies in which the funding were made to should be fully implemented. Like European countries, Americas, and the big nations in general, like since they emit much, I think there should be a funding to African countries. And if that funding were donated to African countries, what I would like to see from my government or my country in general is that the funding is being put into use of what is being intended to. Like this funding is to mitigate climate change. Okay, policies that we have been doing so should be implemented and be fully used. Like this will really change Africa and it will really change Nigeria and it will help in mitigating climate change and forest degradation and everything. So these are like the changes that I want to use. Help from economically stable countries. Then in my country, fully implementation of the help collected and those policies should reach to the grassroots because mostly climate activities in Nigeria, the problems, like those things that were being done that creates climate problems are mostly from local people. So if the countries can help, Nigeria will reach to local people, I think we will bridge a lot of gap. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, Christos, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Christmas is my name from Uganda. Actually, no, when I came to Europe here some few days back, and I was told how long these trees take to grow. And I said, if this was Uganda, by now we'll be living in bare land. Because the way we use trees. And so I really like how trees here are managed because, you plant a tree right now for the coming generation. But in my country, I plant my tree and I want to harvest it. So meaning if it was the same case outside, then people who live long time ago would have finished all the trees and would be living in bare land. So personally, what can we change in Uganda to make the forest sector sustainable? First and foremost, there should be appropriate policy implementation. My country has the most perfect policies, well written down, but when it comes to implementation, it's really a disaster. The other day I went to some forest reserve. It was being called a forest reserve, like a forest reserve, but there was not any single tree there. Just plain. So another thing which should be done, there should be cooperation among African countries. For example, we find a country like, okay, just for example, Kenya, one time gave a ban, okay, like they put a ban on charcoal export. Then by so doing, they were transferring it's what they call emission leakage. So by them banning charcoal in the country, they were taking charcoal from Uganda. So by so doing, their forests are being conserved, then they're using our charcoal, so which is causing emission leakage. It's so bad. So if countries can cooperate and work together and everything to really make the sector really a very good one. Then of course, there is still a lot of funding required if we are to implement the policies and if we are to work as a region, as Africa, everything. Then another great thing that should be done should be capacity building and knowledge sharing. By having exposure, like I've come here, I've learned a lot from the German forest. So if many Africans or Ugandans would have access to come and have this exposure, it would really be great to go back home there and transform the forestry industry. There's a lot that need to be changed, but these are the few I can talk about right now.
Yes, thank you so much for this insight and for all your contributions. It was a pleasure. And now we have prepared something for you, a little present.
Mr. Sparta, if you know it already, you get another one. You had this one or this one? Okay, so then you get also another wine. You have already a cup with a cup, so.
Thank you.
you get also wow. Yeah, so you also get the IFSA Cup, and the other ones, they had already won, so great. Yeah, we're now gonna have a lunch break, and afterwards we starting with a workshop. So lunch break is until 1:30. So you have now 1 hour, and the food is provided, the lunch is provided there at the mensa. Thank you a lot for your attention.
Just a small, yeah, for the lunch.